Yoga, I am right in the middle on. I'm iffy on it.
I'm not a fan. I'm not all that flexible.
Flexibility is life. If you're not
Yep.
flexible, you don't have a good life.
Disagree.
I disagree 100%. Your flexibility is not correlated to how healthy your body actually is. Yep.
In it.
And just because
And it's
they may have
okay
watched
to
the
ask.
exercise on YouTube as
Yes.
well and thought it was a good
Yeah.
thing for you to get them gains, build them
Mhm.
pecs, or
Ask questions.
ask questions, understand the mechanics behind it. Next one.
It'd be like if you had a scab,
Yeah.
right? And it's almost healed.
And then you picked
And
it.
then you picked it, right? Like you didn't wait long enough for your muscles to heal.
Mhm.
And you started back at it. And then you
Mhm.
wonder why, dang it, I did it.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Prime Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Skip Wyss, and I am with my beautiful co-host, Dr. Julie Wyss. You are looking fabulous today. I love the white.
Thank you.
Super clean, super posh, and I'm feeling florific.
Very
I got the
colorful.
flower shirt on today. I'm rolling with the rainbow.
Cutting the color a little bit.
Nothing wrong with a little color in our lives. That's how I like it. Coming at everybody today from Legacy Life Media Studios here in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Today, everybody, we are talking about something kind of funny, and you may not. I'm interested in this
Right.
because we deal with this a lot at Prime Family Chiropractic Centers here in Green Bay, and patients will come in talking to us about this a lot, and it is yoga.
There's so many things going through my head.
We're talking yoga today, and the reason why we're talking exercises, we're talking stretching, and we're going over this for your bodies because number one, people ask thousands of questions a day about stretching, and in our office, online, in YouTube, always viewing these stretching videos and coming in with the next best stretch that YouTube showed them or the next best yoga pose that a yogi showed them or YouTube showed them. And I'm just going to come out and say it right now. Yoga, I am right in the middle on. I'm iffy on it. I'm iffy on yoga. Flat out.
I'm not a fan. I'm not all that flexible.
Well, okay. So number one thing that we hear a lot is flexibility is life. If you're not
Yep.
flexible, you don't have a good life.
Disagree.
I disagree 100%. Your flexibility is not correlated to how healthy your body actually is. Your neurological communication is directly correlated to that. Now, flexibility can help you feel better.
Yes.
It absolutely can. So I'm not telling you not to be flexible. I am not telling you to not do yoga or to stretch. I'm sure there's people out there right now going off in the comments saying, Dr. Skip's crazy. He's saying that yoga is bad for you. I'm not saying yoga is bad for you.
We have many friends that teach yoga, do yoga. So
yeah, I think yoga is a wonderful thing, but I also feel that it needs to be an adjunct to other things in your life. And one of the biggest things is neurology and movement. That is a huge deal. You know, everybody out there, every one of you, if you're listening right now, you have a spinal column. You have a spinal cord.
Sure hope they have a spine.
Yeah, there's a lot of jokes there, right? But you have a nervous system that is fully firing and capable of doing everything. And in fact, if I told you right now to contract your hand, you had a thought before you did it. You had a thought after I said that to actually tell your muscles to fire. So those muscles that you're stretching out, those muscles that you're trying to get elongated, a little bit stronger, like all of those are nothing without communication from your nervous system. They are just steak on a plate. That's all they are. You have to add some heat for them to actually move and function. And I am not telling you that you shouldn't be doing any of that, but your neurology is key. And over half of the nerves that make up your spinal cord are for movement. They are for movement. Yeah. They have to move. They have to have communication. And that'll contraindicate what I just said, actually. That movement isn't exactly needed, but it is. But your spinal cord needs to move. Your spinal column has to move, right? So 60% of those nerves are actually those receptors are in your neck. So where do you think we actually need to have most of our flexibility, most of our movement? It needs to be in our
Yes.
neck. That's the key.
Tennis, right? That'd be really good.
Back and forth. Oh my God, if you can keep up with the ball.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about stretching, because we find that a lot of patients here, they tend to overstretch.
Mhm.
They tend to overwork a joint. And that causes what?
Injury,
Injury, hypermobility.
overuse. Yep.
Exactly. In fact, this was really interesting. I did a research dissertation back in undergrad about stretching and stretching's ability to prevent injury. And in fact, stretching does not prevent injury.
It's actually recommended to not do warm-ups. Like as a runner, we were
To
always
not do
told
static
to,
stretching.
yep,
Right.
to stretch before you'd run. It's actually contraindicated.
It is
You're better off
contraindicated.
to do your run and then making sure that you're stretching
Afterwards, exactly. That is a big misnomer, and you hit that on the head. I'm so glad you talked about that, because these studies that came out in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, they're military readiness studies. So what I'm talking about is there are massive cohorts of data and study material done on subjects in the military, our military, which are guinea pigs all the time. Unfortunately, is that they're tested on all the time. And one of the big ones that they did, though, was stretching. And they took these groups and they did static stretching before they worked out, and then they did static stretching after they worked out. And where they saw where the ones that didn't stretch actually had a better chance of not getting injured versus the ones that stretched, because it caused ligament laxity, it caused the joints to be too lax at the time of running or impact, and it led to hip injuries, knee injuries, and ankle injuries, which was very interesting. And I love it because you were a cross country runner.
Mhm.
And doing active stretching before running was probably more beneficial than static.
Correct.
So the warm-ups, right?
Yep.
So when we're talking warm-up and prevention of injury, especially versus stretching, what are some things that you would recommend, Dr. Julie, for a warm-up?
Well, if you're going to be running, right, it's more of that slower movement jog,
Okay.
right? We're not sitting on the ground and touching our toes and the
Just statically
but
laying there.
right. So more
Right.
like the calisthenics and some of like
Mhm.
the speed and really movement, right? So like if we're talking high school, or if you're talking, in your 30s and 40s, and
Mhm.
you're off of work and you've been sitting all day, right? And then you just sit down and you do more stretching, that's not actively getting all of the correct muscles involved for the activity that you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be going for a longer run, do a short run or a warm-up run to
Mhm.
prep for that longer run.
And then start giving her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And that's where, if we came back to this, then this is where yoga, and we find a lot of patients come in that they are super flexible because they do yoga. So they've got these muscles that are elongated. They've got everything unbound per se, but they still are unhealthy. They still have symptoms. They still have poor motion in the areas that are most important to move, which is the spinal column. Those vertebrae are meant to move and move back and forth, flex, bend from side to side, rotate, bend over, touch your toes. And we see that a lot too in patients, is when they come in. One of the biggest tests, I think, for testing for health is bending over and touching your toes. Like, to me, and I think that's where flexibility is different from stretching. And flexibility, if you can bend over and touch your toes, a lot of people think they're healthy, because we talked about this in our previous podcast about if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But the biggest thing is that a lot of patients can bend over and touch their toes, but where they're actually getting their bend from, where they're getting their flexibility from, is from their elongated hamstrings.
It's not the correct bending.
Not the
motion.
correct area
Not the right
for
fulcrum.
movement. Right. Well,
Is that not
nice
right?
job. Yeah, fulcrum,
Mhm.
right? So you're bending at your hips instead of bending at your low back. And that is key. A lot of people, when you have them bend, have somebody stand to the side and have them bend over and touch their toes. Watch their low back. Watch the small of their back. What you will find is that they will flatten instead of bend. So they'll bend some, and then it flattens, and then they hinge at the hips. And they get all of their
We used
motion.
to always say a funny joke.
What's your joke?
No.
What joke?
Well, I don't want to be friends with a stiff board, right? Like our bodies should bend like a bow,
Yes,
right?
they should.
Yeah,
They should bend.
rigor mortis.
Yeah, they do. Well, they do have rigor mortis, and that's not okay. Like that
Mm.
means that that low back isn't moving correctly. And this is where they will get this common thing where they'll come in and they'll say, "I do yoga. I move a lot. I do a lot of stretching." That's great. That's wonderful. But if we don't have the right communication to those muscles, get the communication of overstretching versus understretching and staying within its normal rhythm, because there is a parabolic curve to this, like in the research too. It's a bell-shaped curve for stretching, and it fits just like the Nautilus equipment that you see in a gym where you're going up and down and you got these fixed things, and it's this wheel that stretches, that pulls the cable around. If you notice, that's not a circle. It's in a very specific pattern to go with the muscle contractions and to go with the muscle relaxation as well. So where I'm going with this is that we need to understand. I know you're like, where are you going here, Skip? Where are you going? We need to understand what that curve does. But you know what's kind of neat is that if you actually have the right communication, you don't have to understand it. Your brain does it. Your brain won't let you overstretch. It'll stop it.
So I think the baseline here is, does our body have the right communication? Is our brain
Exactly.
talking to our muscles, our tendons, to let us know that, okay, we're past maximum stretch.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're impeding upon injury,
Mm-hmm.
and the brain isn't able to send that message.
That's exactly it, because we get in patients that do use these different types of stretching, do use these different types of therapeutic exercises, and come in injured because of it. And they get actually what we call an overuse syndrome.
Right. And we don't understand, right? Because we've been stretching. Like I do
Mm-hmm.
yoga, like this
Yep.
shouldn't happen.
Yep.
And this is again, well, no, it shouldn't have happened. But if our brain wasn't able to communicate that to whatever area you were stretching, that's why.
Yeah, it causes hypermobility.
Mm-hmm.
And overuse syndrome is one of those things that I want to quickly talk about. Is overuse syndrome is when something is actually, it's in the name, it's overused. So it's actually wearing itself out and it's exhausted. And then instead of giving it proper time and recovery to actually heal itself, which can take up to 8 weeks, which drives people nuts, that in itself, you overused it and it'll constantly stay lax and it will become more prone to injury. When if we just took time off from what we're doing, we'd start to heal like we're supposed to.
I always giggle because I always have different analogies that pop up as you're
Well,
talking.
what's the next one?
It'd be like if you had a scab,
Yeah.
right? And it's almost healed.
And then you picked it.
And then you picked it, right? Like you didn't wait long enough for your muscles to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And you started back at it. And
Mm-hmm.
then you wonder why, dang it, I did it again.
Mm-hmm.
Versus letting that completely heal, which takes time. And we all don't like to wait. Like I
Yeah.
understand. But if we can at least get through that entire healing phase, it's going to allow our body a better response. It's going to be stronger,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then we'll be able to get bigger and faster, better health gains after that point.
And what happens when you constantly pick that scab? What happens to the skin?
It gets yucky.
What happens?
It's never
Scars.
It's scars,
Yeah.
right? So then that's why the muscles, like the ligaments, then we're always going to have
Scar
a chronic issue that is now showing up. See, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, no, it was an awesome analogy. That's why I like to have her do these things, because Julie comes up with some of the best analogies ever. But yes, then you have scar tissue buildup. And then what we got to do, we got to break the scar tissue down. And then we're back in this same exact cycle over and over and over again. There is one form, I like flow yoga. I think flow yoga is very neat to do. Heated yoga is too, but we need to incorporate this with some strength training. We also need to incorporate it once we're adjusted and we have a nervous system that's firing. A lot of these exercises can be extremely beneficial. I like it when patients do Pilates.
It's the movement, but I think I don't know if we're going to touch upon this, but right, we're doing all of these movement types of things,
Yep.
and so like bodybuilders, I think, get some of this, right? We go and we want to build the muscle, and we're doing recovery, and we like do the drinks or the protein. If we're doing yoga, if we're doing these things, right, we have to realize what's actually happening to that muscle for it to be able to get stronger. And so we have these little tears in the muscle, the traumas, right, for it to get stronger, for it to lengthen, for right, the strength to actually
That's how
happen,
I
to
get
get
these.
to get
That's how I
built.
get these guns.
With that happening, we have to also make sure that we are adding nutrition at the same time,
Hmm.
right?
To support the muscles, ligaments, and
That's
tone,
of
right?
what you're doing.
Yeah, and I saw you smirk when I talked about my guns because I mean I flexed and my shirt didn't even move, so there's not a lot there. But you're right. So causing micro trauma causes that healing response, which then causes tissue to grow, which is
So
great.
if you think you're going to just do yoga, that's
Hmm.
great, but you can't just do yoga. You have to do yoga, and then we have to add in nutrition or supplements
Yep.
to go together.
Strength train with
That's
it.
the
Yeah.
two need to go together.
And I think building muscle, building good ligaments, building good joints is actually the key. So taking glucosamine to actually feed the
Collagen,
cartilage, taking
chondroitin.
collagen, taking things that actually feed your connective tissue. This is why when people will come in and be like, I started taking collagen peptides. Awesome. Like that's great. But what are we taking it for? You know, is it
Yeah.
is it to help with your skin, to help it keep it
Google
looking
told me.
youthful? Yeah. Google told me, everybody told me adding collagen to my coffee is a good deal. Okay, well, in theory, yes, but what are we doing? Like, what are
Correct.
we trying to do with it? What is the purpose behind it? Do we actually have a collagen insufficiency? Are we actually taking in the proper dosages of vitamin C to help with, or are we consuming enough plants and vegetables and fruit to give us the vitamin C we need? Are we actually eating good mushrooms that have vitamin C in them? Like there's a lot to that helps support the connective tissue, where if we're doing really good flexibility with weight training exercises, like I said, I like it when patients do Pilates. I like Pilates because it's motion, it's flexibility, and it's strength training all in one. Some will argue and say, well, that's yoga. Yes and no. Yes and no. It depends. And honestly, some of the major poses that you do in yoga, and some of you like, you look like you've never done a day of yoga in your life. I used to do a lot of yoga, and some of those poses are very hard to get into that actually help build strength. So I like Pilates. I think Pilates comes in. I like TRX band workouts as well. Doing body weight strength training is very, very important. And then,
but I think with all of these things, if you're doing it yourself or you're taking a class or you have a trainer, right? It's making sure that things are done in the right manner,
yes,
with the proper form.
Yep.
Right? That's where
Form is function, and function is form.
Correct. And if we are constantly doing something in the wrong formation,
Mm-hmm.
or it's like, well, all I'm doing is just trying to, like, bend backwards. Well, there is the right way to do that as well. And so I just caution of, if you're like, okay, this is what I'm going to set up to do, have somebody that can help you, or get, reputable like videos, or the correct videos that are going to show you the right manner in which to do these forms.
And I think if you have a personal trainer that's trying to help you do all of these things, it never hurts to ask your trainer why. Like, why are we doing this? What is this for?
Well, and it's
what muscle
realize
groups?
that just like anybody, the trainer may or may not have expertise
Yep.
in it.
And just because
And
they
it's
may have
okay
watched
to
the
ask.
exercise on YouTube as
Yes.
well and thought it was a good
Yeah.
thing for you to get them gains, build them pecs, or
Ask questions.
ask questions, understand the mechanics behind it, know what you're doing. Every decision you choose to make to increase your flexibility or your overall strength will directly impact your health, both positive and negative, depending on what you're trying to do and what you're trying to support yourself with. Now, we've talked about this in the past. We had a wonderful podcast on core, pelvic floor, rehabbing that area, how we have to help with that. But I think the core stability, which is your pelvic floor, not just your abs, is extremely important in all of this.
And I would say pelvic floor or diaphragm relationship, how those two work together, is more, it's vital. That's the foundation for the core support.
What do you mean diaphragm and pelvic floor?
So the two need to work in relation to each other. If like they need to be parallel to each other to be able to give you core support. When one is not equal to the other, meaning maybe one's on a diagonal, or
weak.
It's just weak, just not functioning, you can be going to the gym every day, you could be doing yoga, you could be doing Pilates, and you're going to realize, man, I can't ever get into this position, or when I get into this position, my core or something just feels bad, or man, that really tweaks my back, or something doesn't feel comfortable. Well, then that should be okay, I need to work on my core. And that's not crunches, That's not getting on the ab machine. And these are the people that like, man, I go to the gym and I do these core workouts, but I'm not getting the definition. You're never going to get the definition if you don't have proper diaphragm and pelvic floor coordination working together.
Yeah, and I think you hit that on the absolute head. And the big thing there, if you go back and listen, is coordination. It's a coordinated effort. It is a 100% synergistic, beautiful symphony. And what's running all of that is that neurological system. But having the ability to come in and retrain those muscles, so these habitual things that you've now developed poor habits with can start changing the habit and become good habits, good stability containing exercises, good stability containing core floor. And I love the analogy you always talk about with a soda can. And if you dent the soda can or you pop the top, you're crushing the soda can. But if you keep that cylinder pressurized and don't cause a leak in the pressure, that soda can is going to hold up tons of weight.
Absolutely.
And that's where restoring that pelvic floor, making sure that pelvic floor is working properly is key. You know, they will talk about, especially in yoga and in Pilates, to suck your belly button up and in when you work out.
Okay. So if you all can do this right now. So if this is where we're supposed to be and we're told to suck the belly button up and in, what just happened to my pelvic floor?
It brought it.
Right.
You tilted.
I tilted.
Yeah.
Right. So now where am I going to get support? Where am I going to be able to pressurize this system? And then that's where I'm going to bend over and touch my toes. And what happened? You know, like my back went out. Your back didn't go out. Your back was weak. You put yourself into a compromised position and you did it all on your own. It's not anything that your back did. You did this. But the amazingly cool thing is that our bodies are smart and our bodies can be retrained. Your body just got used to a bad habit and you allowed that to happen. So that's where we can retrain our bodies and we can learn the good habits to repair these areas.
Yeah, and you're an expert at it. So they need to reach out and talk to you. Yeah. How do they get a hold of you, Dr. Julie?
Well, you can always call our office, 920-781-8228. I try to list our classes on our clinic website, but please send me a DM. I teach classes at least every other month. I'm happy to do one-on-ones. I enjoy working with the postpartum population, but guys, you're not off the hook because you have sometimes even worse issues, worse concerns than some of the women that I work with.
Well, it's never addressed in men.
Correct. It's usually I woke up like this. You didn't just wake up. This has been going on for a very long time. And I'll call you on it, right? But unless we know that there's something wrong, we can't fix it.
So that being said, reach out to Dr. Julie. I want to touch on one other thing with yoga and with any sort of stretching. I think mindfulness is what actually plays in really well with yoga. I think meditation, being one with God, prayer, being mindful of your body and its surroundings, and then connecting yourself to your ultimate source.
I think listening
is key.
Right?
Listening,
like that's we live in a just there's so much noise all around, and I think it's just sometimes I think that's why a lot of people do choose to do yoga or Pilates
to try to ground
to be
themselves.
Able to get that quietness.
Yep, bring themselves back inward instead of having everything outward. So dovetailing off of all of this, yes, movement is life. Flexibility does have an impact on your health, but over flexibility, not a good thing at all. Actually detrimental to your health and very, very hurtful to your joints. Dr. Julie, is there any other thing you'd like to contribute on this today?
No, I'm good.
As usual, if you found this extremely beneficial, share it with your friends, share it with your loved ones. Hit that thumb below, subscribe to us, and just give us some likes, give us some love. All of this helps us get our message out to the world. Take care, everybody. I'm Dr. Skip. This is Dr. Julie for the Prime Podcast. Go out there, get it done. Bye, everyone.